So this is a quick and short follow-up to the video that I posted today, the one which I called, based on the book by Jonathan Haidt, The Anxious Generation. And the bit that I began the video with about the window that we can essentially put and place on a wall, which is essentially meant to be restricting access and keeping children safe. And we imagine that in our metaphoric window, well, it'll keep the elements out and it's okay because nothing can physically get in. But of course, it can get in because total strangers can walk by and wave and make comments and write things, and children can see these things being written down and can reply. And of course, people can shout through the window and they can be heard. And this metaphor analogy is really based on something that Jonathan Haidt himself said. And I just kind of embellished it a little bit and run with it a little bit because it struck me as being so powerful. The second that I thought about the internet in that way, the second that I thought about how children's safe places and spaces were being accessed with this metaphoric window, which of course is much more intrusive and dangerous than an actual window, because at least you could probably see who the strangers were and chase them off and say, get the heck out of here. What are you doing? Tapping on a window and trying to communicate with kids. Who are you? And you might be able to identify these individuals, but of course, in real cyber life, unfortunately, these people are, well, anonymized, that they are not often who they say that they are. And we've just essentially allowed it, well, not always, but very often, total strangers from any part of the population to have access to be able to communicate with children. And that's notwithstanding the deluge of nonsense, rubbish, misinformation, disinformation, and appalling content that they also have been able to get access to for a long time. And so my contention is that not only is the research which has been done by Jonathan Haidt really impressive, it's also really important. And even if people think, well, that's not strictly true, there are other things in the mix. Surely this decline in mental health isn't all to do with smartphones and tablets, etc. Surely there are other things in the mix. Yes, of course there are other things in the mix. But his argument is that these screens, so to speak, are a primary driver. And I think that he's absolutely right. But he could be wrong. I could be wrong, of course. However, even if you have a doubt about that, should we collectively, as a so-called civilized society, be taking that risk at all, even remotely? Should we even consider that if there's a sliver of a chance that we are damaging these children in some way, and also the fact that is there a sliver of a chance that they're going to be interacting with nefarious individuals, can we take that risk? And of course we can't take that risk with the nefarious individuals. Only an utter buffoon would think that was a good idea. And I would suggest that we're all buffoons if we think that it's a good idea that children should be able to access whatever they want. And also, it's the kind of the sort of the reverse almost of the emperor's new clothes. This concept of, a fear of missing out, once more. But like branding, as I mentioned in the video, like trainers, like a t-shirt, like the label that people have got to have on the latest gear. And yeah, that's all over the place. Adults fall for that nonsense as well. It's easy to get into feeling that we're on trend, we're on message, that we are in with the in crowd and all that stuff, which is ultimately nonsense, of course, when you really analyze it and think about it. And so with children, they're pushed in many ways, influenced, hypnotized, entranced to do the same thing. And social media, I think, is that stuff on steroids. It's so you're not on it, you're not on that app, you're not part of that trend, you're not making a video in that way. Hey, you're missing out. I think that we really have to look at that as a society. We've essentially said, hey, screen, smartphone, tablet, you babysit these children whilst we go and do that. And it's not to say that these screens and the electronic media can't be used successfully. Yes, of course it can. But the issue is that because people are so busy, because they're pulled in different directions themselves, I'm talking about the adults here, then it is seductive to think, hey, I can put this child in front of a screen and they'll be quite quiet and entertained. And sometimes, let's again paint the positives in here as well, they can be educated by those devices. But the challenge is, it's kind of Pandora's box. And without proper eyes on, and restrictions, and really facing up to the fact that that access is fraught with danger, far more dangerous than letting children out to play in a group and go outdoors for a few hours. Ultimately, yes, things can go wrong there, but overall, by and large, when you add things up, the dangers are much more online. And anyway, that's why I thought I'd share that information about that book. As I've mentioned, I'm not on commission. I'm not gaining from sharing that stuff in any way whatsoever. I would actively encourage you to look at the videos that Jonathan Haidt himself has made when he's been interviewed. There are podcasts out there. He's written a lot of stuff about it. And I just think the message is so important that we all have to pay attention to it. And crucially, as he suggests, we have to do something about it. Now is not the time to think, I'll do that next week. I will contact other parents. I will contact other carers. I will contact other teachers, etc., and we'll do something tomorrow. Because right now, things move at a pace. And as I've also said, do not for a second think that these companies ultimately care. There will be individuals in there who do, who have empathy and have compassion, but a lot of those people will be scared. They won't speak up. They want to keep the jobs. They want to pay the mortgage next month. It is up to the leaders of those organizations, and they therefore have to be brought to task. They have to be taken to task. They have to be accountable for what they're doing. And they're going through the motions, but it seems to be slow motion. And so we all have to not only lend our voices to that, let's say, trend to change what social media organizations and companies are doing. We all have to speak up. We all have a voice. We all have to say what we believe about it. But we also have to do things ourselves, because these organizations and legislation can move extremely slowly, even with the best intention. And every day that a child is at risk, I think, is a day too long, an hour too long, a minute too long. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope that you you share it, or perhaps more correctly and properly, you have a look at the material that is out there from Jonathan Haidt, and share that and make people aware of it if they're not already aware, because I think it's a real eye-opener. And for me, to finish off this little video, as I said, when I thought about that window, when I heard him just mention that, I thought, wow, that is exactly what we're doing. And then when you sort of build it up into a bit of a story and imagine it actually happening, strange as that may sound, then it's shocking. It's absolutely shocking. Anyway, if you have been watching this, thank you very much for tuning in. I'm just trying this little aspect of the app out in terms of live. I'm not quite sure how to turn it off. I think it may be up here. We'll find out. Bye-bye.